You're live. I'm live. Are you live? Are you there? Hi, Journeyers. Happy Friday. I'm going to wait for a few people to come in. I'm still trying to figure this out, guys, because is this my third or fourth show? It might be my fourth. It might be my third. But what I'm trying to understand is I know that you guys get a heads up as soon as we go live. And it seems to be so instantaneous. You're all over the world. But I just want to make sure before we really get into the crux of this conversation that y'all are here and I'm not talking to a little dot on the top of my laptop. Oh, I want to know how everyone's week has been. I was just talking to Michael. Michael's on standby here. Hi, Allison. I see you there. How are you, Allison? Thanks for joining me. I was talking to Michael, who you'll be hearing from a little later, asking how his week was going. And he said, well, fast. It's gone fast. Like so many others, I'm one who will wake up. This has been happening a lot to me lately. What day is it? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And it's so funny. It'll be during the week. And for some reason, I'm thinking it's the weekend. Or when it's the weekend, I'm thinking it's during the week. So again, the lines of demarcation of our normalcy has blurred, has it not? Hi, Angela. Where are you all from? Much better this week. The past few weeks have been heavy. Tell me about it. Well, guess what, Allison? We're going to talk heavy today. We're going to talk heavy, but the goal is not to commiserate and not come away with something that we can't use, but to try to zero in on partially what may be going on with the backdrop that is obviously so ubiquitous in our lives, and I think will be for some time. Let's get into it. I'm seeing some folks show up. Hi, everyone. Hi, A11 from Montreal. Oh, I was just talking to someone about Montreal recently. I love Quebec. It's the closest I can get to France. I'm not that far, actually, from where you are. Anyway, let's get into the subject. Here's what I want to really get into. We're talking about stress. I can't think of one person that is not dealing with some measure of stress today for obvious reasons. I mean, look, we have come even prior to life before the you-know-what. Stress was at an all-time high for a myriad reasons. And then you add a layer that seems incomprehensible and unfathomable, and the stress levels are going to go up. And that, with what I see happening, Journeyers, I don't know that that's going to go well, the scenario certainly isn't going anywhere anytime soon. I think we all know that. So the question becomes, how do we continue to not just survive, but thrive in an environment that seems to be a fertile ground for stress? And so I got to thinking about that, not just because it's something that I know we're all going through, but I'm going through it. I talked about this in Conscious Commentary in the Garden last week. I don't know if you had a chance to see it, but the title that I put for that episode is, I had a spiritual emergency. I admit it. I'm not going to say meltdown. I'm not going to say nervous breakdown. I certainly didn't have a nervous breakdown, but I think I reached a crescendo, a peak where, and I'm a happy person. I love people, and I have been able to find a measure of calm and positivity in the midst of all of this. But that's not to say that we're still not taking things in, even on a suggestive level. And there were a number of incidents that happened, not directly to me, but just my observing them, that brought me to that crescendo. And I had a bit of a meltdown. I'm not going to go through the whole thing right now. I would encourage you to go back and watch that episode, because I have a feeling a lot of you may relate. Not necessarily a bad thing. We've heard the term spiritual emergency before. Hi, Jean from West Yorkshire, UK. Oh my God, this time last year I was in the UK. I was in Manchester. Anyway, hi to you. So without digressing too much, I want to stick with this idea of encoded emotions. Why your stress may not be going anywhere. What's the one thing that I think many of us are at least trying to practice, have been for years, but maybe you're beefing up right now? And that's meditation or some form of silence. I like to call it silence because I don't know that it is one specific practice. Stilling the body, mind, and spirit, trying to let go of those stresses for the time being is always a good thing. A for effort. However, I have been practicing meditation since I was 13 years old. Long story short, my parents dragged me to meditation class when I was 13. That was our field trip. My parents didn't fly, so we did a lot of things locally. And I learned TM. I learned transcendental meditation at a young age. I've always had, ever since that time, somewhat of an aversion to a specific process with a mantra and sitting in your lotus pose and doing whatever the protocol says to do. So I've always had a sense of let's make it up as we go along. Moreover, let's work on silence rather than the protocol, because I think we can defeat the purpose. Now, in addition to that, for many years, I would find myself, because I was so habituated to the practice of meditation, that I would be in a state of stress or just emotional discord to whatever extent. I would still go into meditation, and lo and behold, when I would go into meditation, it was disastrous. So the question is, what's going on? Most people are meditating. I'm not going to say most people, but a lot of people are meditating in order to alleviate stress. But in the process, are we actually, if we're going into a meditative state while we're stressed, what are we doing? The intention is good, but what may be happening is going into a slightly altered state. I have always felt, and I think there's science to back this up, makes you more susceptible to suggestion. It's just like when you're under hypnosis, you're in a slightly altered state, and whatever suggestion is given to you is designed to go into the subconscious and eventually out into your environment. Well, I happen to think that if you are going into a meditative session, let's say you're feeling really stressed out and you're like, I'm going to do a power meditation for 15 minutes, that'll help. And lo and behold, it can exacerbate the situation. What I feel may be going on, journeyers, is that in a very intense emotional state, you're carrying that in your, well, obviously it's in your energy field, it's in your heartbeat. But when you're going into meditation in that state, it's taking, in an altered state, it's taking that as a suggestion. So rather than alleviating the stress, it may be accelerating or intensifying the stress. Now, I'm going to bring up an example. I don't know if this person's here. I'm not going to mention their name and blow up their spot. But this is somebody that I was speaking to just a few days ago. And she's a fairly regular practitioner of meditation. And she was saying, Alexis, I've been meditating and I do it twice a day. But she was also telling me how she seemed to be running into a lot of people that were confronting her on a variety of things. She was getting, kind of not bullied, that's not the word I want to use, but somewhat harassed by people. And I said, we'll call her Marie. I said, Marie, you've given me probably 6 or 7 examples of people that have been giving you a hard time. Are you meditating? And she said, well, I do it twice a day. And I said, well, if you're going through, and she's going through a lot of stress right now, like many of us. But I said to her, if that's happening and you're going into meditation while you're stressed, I think what you may be doing, you could even be magnetizing more of the same. More of the same is happening because you are meditating in a state of stress. Does that make sense? I'll stop. I want to look because I see a lot of people coming in here. Butterfly in New York City. Okay. A leave-in one. When I put my hand on my heart, my body relaxes quite a bit. That's a great idea. Just putting your hand on your heart. So I that was sort of a red flag for me. Not really a red flag, kind of a confirmation, because I do think that whatever we're carrying, it's just like when we're going to bed, preparing for bed, and just before going to bed, you're watching a news broadcast or a thriller movie or something that's jarring. Here goes the heat again. I'm going to turn on my fan. Brookstone, love it. If you guys have been with me, you know this is part of the show too. So forgive me. We're still dealing with crazy heat here and crazy lights and a door closed. So my mother used to say to me, Alexis, don't ever, and this is particularly after I got married, she said, never go to bed mad at your mate. Well, why? Because you're going to wake up with that same, not only that same sense of angst, but chances are it's going to be accelerated because you brought it into the sleep state, into an altered state, and thus giving your energy field a suggestion. So I would say in dealing with the meditative thing, if you are sure, I think meditation is great to alleviate stress and to calm the nervous system over a period of time, but try to do it when you are in a relative state of calm. So that's one thing I want to say here. I'm looking at my notes. I've got so many notes here, so many things I want to say in this particular regard. When I spoke last week on Conscious Commentary in the Garden, I talked about the spiritual emergency that I had, and I'm going to call it that. And it got me really to thinking about what is triggering certain conditions around us, not just in our immediate environment, but in the larger environment. Now, I know that you all are from everywhere. I see UK here, Montreal, New York City, all over the place. Guys, I don't know about you, but here in New England, we have had the most tumultuous and consistent electrical storms that I have ever seen. Absolutely violent, tropical, very tropical. Obviously, it's been hot. It's been nonstop heat going on. So meteorologically speaking, it makes sense. But in terms of the violence of these storms, and I have taken very careful note of how frequent they've been and how powerful, violent, and loud they have been. I'm talking about lightning strikes. And as a matter of fact, I was on the phone with my dear friend, Cynthia Sue Larson, who may actually show up and say hi today, just yesterday. And we were yet again in the midst of a very violent electrical storm. And we had a jolt of thunder and lightning so loud. Cynthia, all the way in California, we were on Skype, jumped. She's like, "What was that?" I'm like, "That was a pop, and it sounded like something blew up." This has been going on consistently for weeks. So I started thinking about this, and I said, it's no wonder that we're seeing so much of this here. I wonder what's going on in other parts of the country and other parts of the world. And here's why. I think many people probably at least have thought about this idea that our emotion does not, whatever emotion that we're emitting, particularly if it's intense, does not dissipate, does not go anywhere. It's a form of energy. It's a frequency. It goes into your own energy field, but in the larger field, it goes into the environment and can reverberate back to you in lots of ways. Could be with the activity, interactions you're having with other people, scenarios that are happening to you, or it could be happening with weather conditions. And I thought, wouldn't it make perfect sense? I'll put that down. That we're seeing such a barrage of powerful storms in quick succession over weeks with all that's going on. I mean, think about this. We are electrical beings. That is well known. We are emitting frequency constantly, whether good, bad, or neutral. But the more powerful our emotional state is, the more tense we are, the more likely that emotion will become, that stress will become a carrier wave and move into the environment. And so when I started watching these violent electrical storms, I'm going to call them electrical storms, they're bigger than thunderstorms. I mean, they're powerful. We've had a lot of damage, not here in my home, but around the area. I thought to myself, I wonder what's going on in other parts of the country and the world. I'm going to give you two headlines. I brought this up in the show last week, but I think it's worth bringing up again because I think there's a point here. The Watchers News in early June had a report. Listen to this. Nearly 8,000 lightning strikes detected during what meteorologists were calling a once-in-a-decade storm. Once in a decade in Washington state. 8,000 lightning strikes. The Washington Post in late June reported a world record lightning mega flash in South America. Get this, guys, 440 miles long, confirmed by scientists. There were other headlines that I found that I didn't write down, but these two particularly caught my attention. And I thought to myself, yes, I have a feeling that this is a trend that's happening all over. Now, I mentioned this in the show last week, and I'm not going to get into it now, but there may be other factors that are perturbing weather conditions, right? Not for now. But in addition to that, I've always felt intuitively that we, and before I even thought about this from a biological perspective, that we have a direct effect on the weather. And again, I've said this before, nature does not act as a metaphor, but as a mirror. Think of all the collective angst that we have been building up over, at this point, what are we going on, 4 months, 5 months? Sustained, unrelenting, news reports coming out every day, the threat of this pandemic ramping up again in the fall, on and on it goes. I mean, there's so many, not to mention the other layers that we've talked about. Of course, there's sustained stress collectively, and it wouldn't surprise me at all that this is having a major effect on our weather and why these storms are so violent. We are electrical beings. We are emitting this frequency into the environment, and it's coming back to us in the form of violence. It's really quite stunning when you think about it. And so in like manner, this is all, to me, guys, indicative of the fact that we are affecting, through our emotions and our behavior, not only our immediate environment. If we're in a crappy mood when we're getting ready to meditate, what do you think is going to happen? It will become encoded not only in our energy field, but in our very cellular structure, and then emanate out into the environment, reverberate back to us in a whole bunch of different forms. So there, I'm going to stop. I see Norway here. Hi, Norway. Espen, how are you? Record freezing temperatures for July in Norway. That's interesting. Extreme weather. Now, I know another very, 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 very big topic is climate change. I'm not going to get into that here because I think there are a lot of, there's impetus for a lot of what we're seeing that may or may not be organic, right? But I still say that the extremes, whether it's extreme cold in Norway, wow, that's crazy, in July, or extreme electricity and thunder and lightning here in other parts of the world, I feel that we have skin in the game, as I've said. Michael, I'm going to stop here because I have a few more notes to go through. Do we have any questions from our lovely journeyers? So glad to see you.
Hello, and thanks to everybody who are watching and listening from around the world. It's so cool. I always imagine little dots around the globe when of the journeyers. We did have one question that slid by. Butterfly in New York City asked if we are experiencing a magnetic pole shift. Could that be playing a factor as well?
I saw that, Butterfly, and I've wondered that myself. There have been quite a few scientists, both in more of a classical practice as well as more theoretical, that feel that the magnetosphere is shifting, and that I think this is not my bailiwick, so forgive me, but when you look at the magnetic field, you've got both a field fluctuation and an actual pole shift. Obviously, the fluctuation would be more gradual until it eventually goes into a full-on pole shift, and that has been talked about. I can't answer that question. Let me read this again. If we are experiencing a magnetic pole shift, could that be playing back? If that's the case, I think there's so many factors. Absolutely. Butterfly, let's go back to the conversation that we had a few shows ago and that I brought up many times in terms of all that's going on here. I cannot and will not look at anything as having distinct lines of demarcation. I have felt that there is a metaphysical origin to what we're going through, as well as a 3D play out. Implicit of that metaphysical way of looking at what's happening here, the Earth is going through an energetic shift. Minus us, well, it's not minus us, but I mean in and of herself is going through some form of growing pains, evolution, expansion, change. We are inextricably linked to nature, and thus we are going through those growing pains. Hence the reason why it's probably so painful. But as part of this frequency, people call it frequency upgrade, acceleration of energy, how can the magnetosphere not be affected by that? I think it would have to make room for that expansion, if that makes any sense. So I absolutely think it's playing a role. That's playing a role. Our own emotional tethering to the environment and to terra firma herself is playing a role. There, imagine, I'm trying to think of an image that we could use, an octopus with a bunch of tentacles. I don't know if that's the right thing, but imagine a wheel with, there's a center, there's a nucleus, but there are all sorts of spokes on that wheel. I always see this in my, whenever we're trying to meet something out and figure out what's causing this cause and effect formula. And I always say, please try not to isolate one thing as the cause for what we're seeing. It's all of the above, because it's all linked. There is no way we can separate any of this. The magnetosphere, yes, may very well be shifting. In more esoteric parlance, we say the veil is thinning. I actually feel that the veil has pretty much diminished. The veil between this very dense 3D world and perhaps hundreds of other dimensions that exist alongside of us. This is about, with expansion comes pain. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I will, I'm going to think about that more. Yes, I do feel that could be playing a part. Hi, Curtis Hill. How are you? Hot here, huh? I know, Curtis, you're in Massachusetts. I think you're on the Cape, right? Yeah. Crazy, crazy electrical storms, Curtis, right? That's what we've been talking about. Let's see. I want to try to stay as close on topic as I can. So let's go back. Let's review for a minute. So does what I'm saying make sense in terms of the fact that what we are emitting emotionally is absolutely being encoded in our aura, in our immediate environment, and perhaps in the field itself? Let me know. Thumbs up. Does that make sense? Okay. It does to me. I started to say this can't be quantified with black and white science, and yet we know that there are scientists and researchers, very erudite researchers, the likes of Rupert Sheldrake and Morphic Fields, talking about how information is encoded in the field. Brilliant physicists like William Tiller, who's talked about these sorts of things as well. So there is certainly some data to show that, for God's sakes, Einstein, we all know energy does not die, it simply changes form. It has to go somewhere. It has to go somewhere. So imagine the intensity of what we are feeling individually and collectively. It's going somewhere, all right, and it's coming back to us. So again, the question is, what can we do about it? I'm going to get to that in a little bit. I'm going to watch the clock too. Already 23 minutes. Wow. Did you all see my interview with Stephen Halpern? Not this week, but the week before. We had a fabulous show, and I certainly hope that you'll go back and watch that interview. Stephen is such a wealth of knowledge, a literal repository of knowledge when it comes to this sort of thing, particularly when it has to do with sound as frequency and vibration and how it affects the body. Now, we were talking more about how we can use healing sound. We've all heard it. I've got a little something I'm going to do for you, speaking of sound, to boost immune levels. I know even that can be a taboo word these days on certain venues, but I'm just going to say it. Let's just say sound for overall health. And we had a fantastic conversation about the dynamic of that and really the science of that and what denotes non-stress related sound versus deleterious or stress triggering sound. And there's some subtleties in there. Please go and watch that, because there's some things that he pointed out that I think are brilliant and make perfect sense to me. But I want to read something that he said in our show the other week. He brought up this powerful example in terms of how we are entrained by outer stimuli. And this is related. He said, I'm going to quote him. He said, entrainment is the fact that our heartbeat and breathing are set up to be physically engaged. An external rhythm will cause your heartbeat to immediately match the speed of whatever you're taking in. He said, I can cause your heartbeat to speed up as an artist. He can go faster with the piano that he's playing. He said, I can do it with my voice. I can do it with intention, or I could slow it back down. So he says, when I'm in the studio, I'm always in a peaceful, relaxed state, or I don't record. And that's what triggered me to want to talk to you about why, if you're not in a peaceful and relaxed state, do not meditate, because you're going to encode whatever your mindset, even your physical condition is at that time, much like artists do when they're playing music or recording a record, let's say, a record. I'm sounding really old. An album. Let's say they're in a really crappy mood. It doesn't matter even if they can produce the beautiful music to the ears at the time because they're practiced at it. If they're in a crappy mood, somehow that mood is going to be encoded in the music that you're going to listen to. Well, to me, it's the same as when you're meditating. Again, I think I'm beating a dead horse at this point, but when he said that, that really made me think of that. But the key here is he talked about how the heart, and we know that our entire cellular structure are little recorders in and of themselves. They're brilliant and they communicate with each other. But the heart, as one very powerful example, is in training itself to whatever stimuli is coming from the outside. So if you're under stress, and let's say you're under stress because your spouse yelled at you, or you're watching too much news, God only knows that's enough, whatever the case may be. But the method by which these messages are coming to you are by what? Sound and rhythm. And if those sounds are deleterious, if those sounds are jolting, your heart is trained to be entrained by what it's hearing, like a metronome. I remember when I took piano lessons many moons ago, my mother used to have my piano teacher used to have a metronome, and I had to keep up with that. You know, the pace. I had to pace myself according to the metronome. Well, your heart's doing the same thing. So therefore, if you're hearing jolting, jarring sounds constantly, your heart is going to entrain with that. And that is what is encoded in the environment. And that ain't good for you. That's what I'm talking about. I'm kind of going a long way around making that point, but such is the case. But Heart Math, who I've worked with, I've got to get Howard Martin back on the show. Great organization, the Heart Math Institute. I'm sure many of you are familiar with. I wanted to do a little bit of research to see how that linked, at least tangentially, to what Stephen was saying. And I got a great quote from them that says, speaking of the heart, and by the way, butterfly magnetic field, the heart's magnetic field, which is the strongest rhythmic field produced by the human body, not only envelops every cell of the body, but also extends out in all directions into the space around us. The heart's magnetic field can be measured several feet away from the body by sensitive magnetometers. Research conducted at Heart Math Institute suggests the heart's field is an important carrier of information. So we're kind of putting it together an equation here. We're built basically to record and then broadcast emotions, particularly emotions, but words and sound, and often emotion through words and sound. And it's going out all over the place. Make sense? Make sense? I'm looking at Jewel McFillin, who's saying, oh, I think you're talking to somebody else. It must be something energetic or electromagnetic. Glad I'm not alone. Okay, I think I just crashed another conversation. Sorry. Anyway, like I said, I feel that most stress, a lot of the stress that we have is triggered by, or the conduit for how it's coming through is sound. And that's why we need to be so careful with the manner in which we're taking in sound, whether it's a tone of someone's voice. If I'm going up like this, coming down like this, our heart is going to work in accordance with that. All right. An alarm clock, another example. You know, I was thinking about this the other day. I'm going to find out who invented the alarm clock. I'm sure they're not around anymore, but if they were, I'd clock them over the head. Listen, guys, does this not make sense? Not only alarm clock, but the when the kids were in school, the bell, the school bell, the class or the day has ended. They're jarring sounds. We have no business being in that kind of environment day in and day out. Imagine. I'm sure some of you are still using an alarm clock. I haven't used one in years. I'm actually working on my inner alarm clock, waking me up very gently. But think about that. Zzz, and other horrible sounds. That's a heck of a way to start your day, eh? We're not built to have jarring sounds in our lives. That in and of itself is causing stress. So here's what I want to do. I'm going to keep looking at this clock. We're almost at 30 minutes. I'm not going to keep you too much longer. I want to try something. Actually, before I do, Michael, before I try this, I'm going to do a little demonstration for you all that I think you might like. Any questions before I get started on our little demonstration?
I think we're good. It was just a few comments, and I think you touched on them already. I pulled up the Howard Martin episode. It's available in the chat, as well as the Stephen Halpern episode. So for when this is over, journeyers, go ahead, please jump on and check those out.
I love what Espen says. The sun was the first alarm clock. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we know that many indigenous cultures, that's all they had. Certainly there was no alarm clock. But guess what, Espen? Their own physiology and energy field, I'm sure, was entrained with the position of the sun, so they knew when to wake up, not because of the physical light coming into their eyes, but because they understood those patterns and those movements. So yes, absolutely. I'm going to see what else is here. Okay. I don't know what I'm not going to comment on that, Jewel. All right, listen, let's start this little demonstration. This is something, whoops, there goes my fan. I want to start this little demonstration for y'all. I know you all are familiar with this little baby here, Tibetan singing bowl. I've had this bowl for years now. I only have one, but I really love this. I actually used this with Stephen Halpern when we were on the other day. Actually, we were off air. This is obviously something that can be used to calm and to even excite emotion. But I think if you wanted to use something to calm yourself, this can be used in a slightly different way than most people use it. Now, I know that typically when you are beginning a session with a singing bowl, you start with a tap, just like that, right? What I have been doing in meditation, and I almost felt like I needed to do this intuitively, but when I started to think about it, there was a reason for it. Let's see if I'm going to put this close to the microphone so you can see. I'm not going to strike this singing bowl. What I'm simply going to do is touch it. And we're going to go. You're not going to hear anything right away, but let me just be quiet and let you hear what comes up. Eventually. It might take a minute. You hear it? Here we go.
Yep, just picking it up now.
There we go. Can you all hear it? I am dying in here, you guys. This heat is kicking my butt with these lights. Anyway. Okay, now, here's what I'm going to do. So what I just did was what I call sound centering. Just made it up. Maybe someone else is doing it. But I have to tell you, when I did a search for singing bowl demonstrations to see if anybody else was doing this in terms of, the one-on-one on how to use a singing bowl, every single demonstration started with the striking. Now, sometimes it's a very light tap. Other times it's louder. But I felt if there's one way that we may be able to, let's say we're in a bit of stress and we want to do a meditation session, this for me has worked wonders. Not striking, not even tapping, but simply touching and bringing, I always say bringing something from nothing, creating something from no thing. It starts with complete silence and then it gradually accelerates into a sound that's audible. And then I let it stay at that level for a little bit and then I bring it back down until there's silence again. There's something that's very, it's almost like a completion, a full circle. But most importantly, there's, even if it's just a tap, it's still, the heart is acknowledging a very sharp, acute beginning and ending. A lot of people also end their singing bowl session with a tap or a strike. And this is just my advice to you. I think it certainly isn't going to hurt to try this if you want to try to calm yourself down and center yourself. Start with that. Use that approach instead of tapping it. Just start with no thing and let it graduate to something, or no sound into some sound. It's very calming. Does that make sense? Okay. So I'm really going back to where we started this conversation. If you're going to meditate, and I absolutely advocate meditation, I think it's a fabulous thing to do in the right mood, in the right mindset, so you can get the most out of it. Something else occurred to me. There are two things I want to leave you with before we go, a couple of announcements as well. Create a stress-free zone. When I thought of that, I'm like, that's so cliche. We've got free speech zones, we got protest zones. Well, let's create a stress-free zone. A stress-free zone, if you can, not everyone can do it, but if you have the space in your home where you can designate a room, not just for meditation, but a room that you simply do not allow any bad energy in there, meaning no arguing in the room, no going into that room when you're in a bad space emotionally, stress-free. What's happening once again is, let's say you're in a room with your mate and you have a tendency to have most of your arguments in that room, what do you think is happening over a period of time? There's a cumulative effect of stress that's going to be stagnant in that space. It's another reason why a lot of people will use singing bowls. I do it, and as well as smudging and other things that we can do to try to get that energy moving and out the door, because clearly that is staying there. So imagine if you have a room that you typically go to meditate, but that's an all-purpose room. So it's a room where you watch TV. It's a room where you go when you're pissed and you want to sit and let off some steam or argue or anything that's jarring, even loud music. I say, if you can, designate even just a small part of your home, and by no means let anything that's going to be deleterious, loud, or jarring in that space. I think it would be beneficial for you. So I think that would be helpful. The other thing I want to mention is, are you all familiar with something called ASMR? This is apparently a huge thing on YouTube, and I just recently learned about it. I don't know if Steve, his handle is Steve Earthkeeper, who's a wonderful crystal collector, asked me, have you done ASMR? I'll tell you what it is. ASMR stands for Autonomous Sensory Meridian Response. ASMR is essentially it's a tingling sensation that people will often feel that starts in their scalp and then will go down to the back of their neck and eventually throughout their body. And it's very relaxing, and it kind of gives a mild sort of euphoric sense. A lot of people on YouTube, and I'll tell you how I found out. Steve had messaged me or commented on something I had said on Instagram. Many of you know that I'm also a voice actor. I do a lot of narration, and it must have been something that I had posted about that. And he was commenting on my voice and said, "Have you ever thought of doing ASMR, Alexis?" And I'm like, I better go Google that. I didn't even know what it was. I had never heard of it. And so I quickly did and found out what it was. And essentially what people are doing, some of you, if you give a thumbs up if you're familiar with it. People are going on YouTube and essentially they're whispering. They're just talking very slowly. I don't know if you can hear me. I'll get close to the microphone. And it's sparking this ASMR. Some people are simply whispering, talking very softly. And what is happening is it's triggering this ASMR sensation of the tingling, starting at the scalp and going to the back of the neck, etc. Well, I'm going to bring my voice back up. It's quite interesting. I don't know that I would do it per se as a trend on YouTube, but what occurred to me is this. I'll bring my voice up to normal. I hope you could hear me there. I was practicing a little bit of it for myself, and I thought, this is a stress buster. Just keeping your voice down, keeping it calm. Sound has such an effect on our nervous system. Even hearing our own voice when we're huffy about something and loud, of course it's going to have an effect on our stress level. So another way that we might work on to alleviate that stress, even in short intervals, here's what I would suggest. Come up with a few affirmations or a message to yourself. Alexis, you are feeling calm today. You are feeling warm, whatever you want to say. And record your own voice. Record your own voice. You don't have to be a voice actor to do it. I'm sure many of you have wonderful voices, but I think there is something about hearing your own voice, because your own cellular structure knows your voice. That's your signature. Practice taking your voice down in a very calm, loving way and record it. And when you're feeling stressed, simply play that back to yourself. I have a feeling it'll help. Any thoughts on that? I'm getting
I want to jump in there.
Okay, please do.
If I may, I think it would be a fantastic idea if you did a short video or a couple of short videos with the music bowl, and perhaps maybe we experiment with a little bit of your voice as a guider on some ASMR stuff. I was just saying.
Okay. There we go. I'm smiling. I heard everything you said, but I'm laughing at Butterfly in New York City because she says, I have a friend who starts sneezing when she listens to ASMR. Are you kidding? Isn't that interesting, Butterfly? I'd like to hear more about that. If you want to email me, anybody that knows anything about this, I would love to know more about it. Now, interestingly, it was Steve, Earthkeeper, his handle, who said, I love your voice, Alexis. Have you ever thought about doing ASMR? And I'm like, no, but I don't know that I would do that specifically. There are enough people out there doing it. And you hear enough of my voice. We'll see. I don't know, Michael. I don't know. But I think if you do it, never mind me, your body knows your voice. That is your signature. Practice, make it up. I've done that before, by the way, where I've given myself affirmations, but in the spoken word, it's more important. Well, I'm not going to say it's more important. I think it's very powerful. Sound is vibration, and vibration resonates. It emanates into the environment, and it will start to build a energetic structure or signature that you will invariably participate in. So the spoken word is powerful. I think I brought this up in the last show. The word is so powerful, and your words are powerful. So make it a point to come up with some things that you want and need to hear, whatever they are. I'm not going to even come up with anything. You come up with it. Record your own voice. All you have to do is use this little thing right here and listen to your voice over time. Let's come back and meet on that and see if that is helpful to you all. Good. All right. Thoroff, try it. I tell you what, we're going to bring this up again. I want to find out what happened. And yes, Michael, I might consider, would you guys like that if I did a demonstration or some sort of, what is it that you said, Michael, that you wanted me to do?
I think maybe the bowl, the music bowl, maybe we don't have to go into the ASMR field, but just maybe a calming voice and just a quick little video to help people just de-stress and relax, where they can go to that and maybe go off those tones and then continue to practice it with their voice or their affirmations to themselves.
You let me know, journeyers, will you? I want to do what you want me to do. I want to be here to support you in any way I can. So I don't want to just spin my wheels. If you think it would be helpful, we'll certainly put something together. Okay. I have done some meditations, not too many. I am doing more of them. Some of them are on my Patreon channel. I always call it channel, Patreon platform. And here's a little announcement. I'm so excited. I finally we finally just got approval from Audible. I'm an Audible narrator, and after many months and lots of snafus, the book, I believe is the bestseller by Rob and Trish McGregor, Phenomena. I was very honored to be asked to narrate that book, and I can say it now. We just got approval from ACX is what runs the business side of Audible. We just got approval. So we are now available. This audiobook called Phenomena, maybe I can get a link or we can put it in eventually, is available. So if you want to hear my voice, you'll hear a lot of it, talking about some really interesting stuff. So I'm talking all the time, you know that. So, but yay! So excited.
Who's the author again? I'm sorry to interrupt.
Rob and Trish McGregor. They are, I call them the synchronicity gurus. I mean, they are just phenomenal writers. They're very, very well established as best-selling authors and have worked with tons of people. So yeah. Okay, I'm going to get to announcements so we can, unless there's anything that's pressing that you want me to bring up, Journeyers. I don't know that I see anything here. I'm going to get to the announcements, and if there's anything that comes up after before we sign off, let me know. Okay, first thing. I'm not doing any shows next week, guys. I'm taking a week off from shows, not for vacation, but because I have more projects that I'm working on. Some of them will involve you, and I'm really excited about it. So I wanted to let you know there will not be either a Higher Journeys guest show, nor it would be in the garden normally next Friday. So I'm going to take a week off, and then we'll be back the following week with both a wonderful guest for you, and we'll meet back here for Conscious Commentary Live. So that's announcement number one. Going to take a week off of shows and focus on some other projects. One of these days I'll get to take a little vacation. Not this time. So that's one thing. Now, here's the other. I want to let you know. It's been a couple of weeks, and I certainly had planned on letting y'all know, but I wanted to wait. And it's not a bad thing, but it's something that you may not be expecting. I left Midnight in the Desert. I left the show, Art Bell's Midnight in the Desert. You may know that I was absolutely bowled over and honored to be asked to host Friday night about a month and a half ago. And I did do the show. I did 2 shows. I'm not going to get into details, but I will tell you that there was a very, very distinct conflict. Conflict may not be the right word, but I did not like the style in which they were running the show. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus because I certainly wish them well, but let's just say it was not my cup of tea. And I think you all know that I am here in this field and in this space for you and to uplift you. And so being marred in what I thought was a bit of darkness wouldn't help any of us. And so I wish them well. I honor the legacy of Art Bell. And so I hope that this show does well. So I made the decision that I could not go on in the environment. And it's too bad because I really enjoyed doing the shows and they were happy with me, but I made the decision on my own to exit very quickly. What's really interesting is serendipitously a week before, I think if you recall, if you were with us, we were in Mercury retrograde, and PMH Atwater, I had read to you about how she said the do's and don'ts of Mercury retrograde. Great time to end things, horrible time to start things. Most if not all things that get started won't stay started during retrograde Mercury. Do you know that I started my first show of Midnight in the Desert on the first day of Mercury retrograde? Didn't even think about it. There were some things that I was aware it was retrograde, and I thought, uh-oh. But I kept going. But then I saw some things that were obvious to me that I had to leave. So there you have it. There's your Mercury retrograde and beyond story. So there you go. All right. So that's it. Onward. So many more things going on. And again, I wish them well. It'll give you more time to focus on higher journeys and you, who I love so much. So that's it. I think that's all. I think we've covered everything, unless there's anything else here. Thank you, Edwin.
I'm sorry, I did find the Audible version of Phenomena, and It is also linked in the chat.
Great. Thank you.
Just to remind everyone, there's 3 different membership levels available on Patreon. So check out the channel, and there is
Yeah.
obviously more exclusive content there. So if you like what you see, obviously give us a thumbs up here and subscribe, but check out Patreon as well.
Thank you, Michael. Yeah, Patreon. Look, guys, and I'm not going to go into a promo on Patreon. I think a lot of you know what it is. It's a fabulous platform, and it really gives content creators the opportunity for those that know the work to come not only and support higher journeys and those like me, but to get some good stuff. And it's forced me to be even more creative, which I love to do. So we've got some exclusive content over there. Obviously, the after show, I think, is probably the most popular. So come on over. Yeah, check it out. Anyway, that's it. I hope you all are planning to do something fun this weekend, wherever you may be on this little blue planet. I know what I'm doing. I'm mulching my garden. Oh my God. I do love it. It's a labor of love. And it's one of the reasons why I'm doing conscious commentary in the garden. But I'll be in the garden tomorrow. So that's where you can find me. All right. So if we don't have any questions or anything pressing, I'm going to sign off for now. And I say I love you. And let's meet back here. If you like, please leave me some comments and let me know. You are what help inform what we're talking about here. So if you want to continue this particular conversation we had today, leave me a comment below and say, Alexis, let's talk about this, or I want to go into this a little bit more. And I will be happy to do just that. All right, everyone, I love you. Stay safe, stay beautiful, and most importantly, stay stress-free. Namaste.